Good evening, YouTube. I hope everyone's doing well today. It's Sunday evening, and I hope everyone has had a pleasant weekend and that we can look forward to a good week. I'm actually coming to you live on the 29th of December, so hope you all had a nice Christmas and that, there's good things to come in the new year. Myself, I'm looking forward to the new year. Lot of good things to come. Got several trips coming up, but unfortunately they can't come, I guess, quick enough. I'm not sure if I said this in my introduction, but my favorite thing in the world to do pretty much is just travel with my wife, just going to new places. So, I might put a separate blog upon that, upon my traveling, since, that's something I really enjoy. Not just international, but, just domestic, seeing places within even your own state or a nearby state where you just might happen to forget about. There's a lot of cool things. Proceeding though, so I will begin narrating my blogs, just pretty much going verbatim, although I might offer occasional extra commentary. I do apologize, as I do not intend to sound very esoteric in my writing. I have noticed that something that I continue to do is that I have a very complicated word choice. I ran this error more so in college. I have checked myself more in the current, at least when I'm speaking to other individuals. But unless I am writing in a specific format, if I am left to my own devices, there is a very high chance that I'm going to end up, using a lot of, I would say, you hear about $2 words, but they're really like $20. Hey, even 100. Open a new account at this bank, get free money. I feel like that describes my words pretty perfectly. They're pretty long. I would even say $100 words, and I don't intend to do this, but it comes from a history of just the old professor of mine who always told me that you have to really consider what every word encapsulates. And when I think about that in my mind, I really feel compelled to use very specific terms to get exactly what kind of connotation or point I would have across. I really do not like finer points not being articulated. I'm a bit of a stickler in that regard. Whether my points are clear or not, though, that's another thing, and I know that's really important. But at least to me, they're kind of a personal exercise as much as they are a communicatory exercise, and I do apologize for that. I don't intend it to be that way. I intend it to be everything that I do to be discussion based and to be publicly accessible. But old habits die hard, and I really feel like you have to really express what you're saying, not just type it. Alright, so with that, I am going to proceed to my recounting my first substantive blog. I will not recount my introduction. There's a different introduction in my blog, which you can read at your leisure, should you wish to anyways. Proceeding. Thank you so much. My first blog entry was titled "The Blight That Is Modern Feminism." I posted this 6 days ago on December 23rd, 2013, and it goes like this. If you peruse YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, Imgur, or just about any other form of open social media forum, there is a substantial likelihood that you have encountered offshoots and manifestations of an already nuanced contemporary movement. I refer here to third-wave feminism, an entity which has gained significant traction between the late 70s through mid-90s, as well as throughout the 2000s to a lesser extent. Third-wave feminism, a purported derivative but suspiciously philosophically opposed and politically alternative movement to that of prior iterations of feminism, has oscillated between periods of stark salience and complete withdrawal from the public forum. With the advent of social media, however, it has made not only a comeback, but has reinvented itself in a further aberrant manner. It has transmuted into an all-encompassing basis for humor, jokes, political ideology, ambiguous agenda, ideals, etc. As has come to manifest over the last few years, particularly online, it has abetted in, or may be directly implicated in, the formation of an expansive amount of derivative social phenomena, critiques, and quasi-movements. An example of this is the check your privilege fad, which I do not believe would have permeated society at large, let alone become a fad, prior to the internet and the community coming to have developed the way it has. I hesitate to say blogosphere, since that would be an inadequate term to describe the way in which the movement observed has taken flight, and further, because the internet and society have left the blogosphere era behind, thereby allowing said movement to have flourished. For those who are unfamiliar, third-wave feminism essentially admonishes that the highest and final, or at least current, step of gender equality is predicated upon boundless exploration and indulgence of sexual endeavors. The way in which it has taken root in the interwebs is manifold. Amongst the most salient vehicle is that of slut movements, where adherents deem themselves to be engaging in a socially progressive movement by flipping the traditional notions and connotations of certain acts, constructs, and phenomena, offering in their place a substitute that is substantively aberrant or which aims to modify some component of the item of interest. In slut pride, for example, there is a worldwide phenomena known as the slut walk, wherein proponents congregate in order to exhibit their lack of shame pursuant their sexuality. It is a display with which to impose and levy against purported opposition their indifference to negative connotations associated with their behavior. Such opposition may be constructed in the form of institutions and individuals who would disapprove of their ways. In solidarity, they parade or champion, contingent upon how nobly perceived their mission to be, their lifestyle interests in a manner that seeks to assert the primary principle of third-wave feminism. These gatherings have become commonplace in big cities the world over. With that clarified, I proceed into brief observations of the following: the flaws of modern feminism, as well as why it is self-damaging, why modern feminism is derivative and simply overly constructed bits of hyper-intellectualization rather than offering insight into reality, the state of gender politics, as well as inaccurate gender perceptions, which are relevant to law, public policy, and society as it pertains to civil rights and liberties, at least in the Western world. And lastly, comparative analysis of the West as opposed to the global South as it is so called, notably that of the Islamic world, though I am considering adding additional analyses as well. While I had originally intended to type up analyses for each of these components and arguing a broader picture all at once, I think it would be a tad exhaustive to myself, as well as to you, dear reader, to sift through and consider all that information at one sitting. I shall instead make it a 4-part subseries in articulating each perspective, with a concluding post thereafter on broader implications. I believe it would also do a disservice to marginalize these issues as something secondary, something which is compact or which may be compartmentalized to such ends that they are but a sidebar. While they are a sidebar of sorts in articulating a bigger picture, they are each significant on their own merits, to such ends that they must be reviewed in depth and separately. I have typed up my analysis of the first issue subset on this day, December 20. Well, I guess when I say this day, I mean 6 days ago, December 23rd. I have been intending to type up my analyses of the next two, which I hopefully shall get to tonight, but I offer no promise. But hopefully, since I am currently on winter break away from school, I will be able to wrap up at least 2 of these parts, if not all 4, with the conclusion thereafter. So stay tuned for those. I tend to type these things up all at once. I like to put a topic out there, but I usually, at least on my blog, it's not meant to be a research paper overwhelming you with evidence saying, no, you're wrong on these points. It is strictly a piece which I am to, I guess, construct all at once. It is supposed excuse me. It is as much an opinion piece as it is an analytical piece, but it's not meant to be a research paper, if that makes sense. It is meant to be food for thought above all else, although I will incorporate a lot of research that I have read in presenting my arguments and my opinions. It is not intended to be, in any way, shape, or form, a symposium or a synthesis of academic information, nor should it be considered as such. I should just offer that disclaimer in advance. Thank you. Moving on, I proceed to subtopic A, the flaws of modern feminism and why it is self-damaging. Modern feminism is, as stated before, an induction to hedonism under the ruse of equality. Less overtly, it is the guise of passionate and unabated pursuits of conferred liberties under the veil of condescension, displaced anger, adversary, illusory shareholder games, and a desire to supersede. It is a conscription into a state of animosity which promises enlightenment and happiness. Those were all a lot of broad assertions and claims. I had intended to articulate those further, but I had not. I did not do so as it would be quite exhaustive. Should you wish for me to articulate this, please do not hesitate to leave a comment. I can comment upon one item specifically, as you may please, or all of them concurrently. I guess, since illusory shareholder games is something that is a little ethereal and very, I think, nuanced, I will articulate that before I move further. When I say illusory shareholder games, I imply two things. One, that there are shareholder games, and two, that it is illusory. By shareholder games, I mean that essentially there are sides with stakes. There are parties which are represented, which advocate for or against other ends or people or properties, and which would seek to propagate or promulgate certain assertions or social phenomena or policy in the populace. The reason why I say it is illusory is because there is, in fact, no side. There is no real side. It is a common mistake to infer that there are constant battles as results of disequilibrium amongst social classes, among social strata. This is something that your professor or your teacher, depending on whether you're in college or high school, or whether you've graduated regardless, may admonish unto you, may tell you repeatedly. That society is not only pushed by, but it is galvanized by and around social phenomena that specifically, explicitly, and always, perpetually, fuels conflict. Conflict being not only derivative, but also the pushing force of all social construction, of all social outcome, whether that is in terms of economic benefits or loss, or of political gain or loss. But that is a broader discussion which I will not consider here, that on the whole. However, I can tell you, as it pertains to this situation in particular, it is counterintuitive and it is without substance to claim that there is a constant war of genders, of social inequity, which is fueled by shareholders who would wish to see a certain result, by populace who would constitute shareholders, or who would further shareholders. You can construe shareholder here to be an elite, a quasi-group of select individuals, a segment of society at large, or society at large. It is applicable in all three ways. There is no evidence that there is any substantive form of quote-unquote patriarchy, which feminists in the modern would have you believe are seeking to assert some form of negativity or futility or binding to their life. It is illusory. It is false. If anything, what I will present in the following shall show that, if anything, life has become more and more good for females in the present. And yet, despite all of this, if you look at, as I said before, Twitter, Imgur, any other form of social media, you will observe that there are a large amount of trends which would posit that there is some kind of social fracture on the whole that demands the utmost attention because there is such grave conflict. My friends, regardless of where you stand, I bid you to consider why someone would truly say this. Do you observe personally, and please consider why and how, as opposed to your simple induction, your simple instruction. Why and how have conflict come to manifest? Are they simply products of intellectualization, of theory, of an agenda, or are they reality? I beg you to consider the latter. Such is my line of reasoning. Proceeding. In the years that modern feminism has pervaded and come to engulf the public, what manner of change has there been in ebbing the strength and enmity that adherents would give? If we were to assume that change has taken place as a result of their efforts, the sole justifiable cause thereof, why have the scope of feminist acts simply magnified over the continuum of the last 30 years as opposed to ceding? It does not make sense that a movement should strengthen in stature, size, or degree, should change have accrued. Likewise, it does not follow that a movement would become so massive, were it restricted politically. The movement at large is a large mass of ill-gotten anger that forgets its roots, and seeks a reason to lie and remain mobilized, as opposed to having come upon a cause that should, in actuality, rally its adherents. Or is it that change is never to come, or never in sufficient amount, if we are to permit that the advent of new avenues of which are of equal, if not greater passion than in the past, are to survive under the premise that change has been and continues to be insufficient? We must ask ourselves why such movements would continue in pursuit of a futility of the utmost. Based upon these two alternative propositions, we may find ourselves with widely varying answers. The state of institutions, however, do not vary. The interpretation thereof may, but analysis thereof is static, save those whose ears would shy away from hearing such. The truth is that the degree of sympathy afforded females has become so stark in the present, it has come to instill itself as a fixture, as opposed to being an oppositional movement which struggles to find life. From the indoctrination you see in college classrooms, of professors offering feminist dominant theory as classroom instruction, to widespread personal accounts of individuals who are lambasted en masse by their peers for diverging from those points. A macro shift may be seen in the communal as well as the institutional level, the former and latter reciprocating one another, depending on the happenstance and social strata. These days, it seems it does not only not pay to be opposed to modern feminism, but that even having no opinion on the matter is indicative of something worthy of the utmost acrimony. It is truly distressing. All the worse is made of the situation were one to consider that the statistics further indicate favorable outcomes for women in education, pay grade, jobs, scholarships, other opportunities, and etc. There is, in essence, a mass opposition which has come to be internalized as a standard in favor of a viewpoint which has become archaic upon its own merits, but which survives and thrives owing to some form of ill-gotten guilt on the part of some, a forced induction on the part of others, and of an unabated pursuit of self from others yet. It is, in this vein, Sorry, my wife was being silly. It is, in this vein, paradoxical why modern feminism continues to linger. Notice that I have not taken a moral standpoint upon the issue, that is, of detriment to family or society, of the vaunted slippery slope that all sides enjoy employing at their benefit, of what may become of our children, or us, as it were, whatever that may entail and to whatever ends. The morality for abating the tendencies of modern feminism and its ramifications are strong, but presenting and levying morality as an argument against modern feminism, however inherently immoral it may be, is insufficient to stand against it upon its own devices. I instead wish to, through writing of my thoughts, bid you as well as myself to consider the philosophical uselessness of this movement, and the substantive inequities it presents in the form of deconstructing society in the name and pursuit of an ambition which has presumably been satisfied, but is nonetheless ambiguous. Modern feminism, sadly, does not fall within the idiom of too much of a good thing is a great thing, regardless of what its proponents may aver. The belief of non-belief, that is, a perpetual dissatisfaction and inability to discern that progress may ensue, instead of opting for a specific movement which has a set of goals or a set of core principles which are applicable in the mundane of everyday life, seem to oscillate between philosophically esoteric goals, which are abstract and twisted beyond all recognition, see modern feminist literature, and mass outcry, which is ambiguous, undirected, and only serves to further sever the public good from the public. The public good being an illusory point at which all things being either held equal or in their premium, a label I prefer to use instead of optimum, as it denotes that one's image of optimal status is subjective and may or may not be truly objective. Conditions for society at large will be rendered worse on account of this sole variance. I prescribe this to be the case on account of the constant sympathy within social circles as well as within institutions that individuals are expected to offer, even if against their own ends or regards. A textbook example of how the unabated thirst for betterment under the deception of quality has harmed society is in scholarships, particularly in fields which are both dominated by females as well as those by men. The former refers to the social sciences, whereas the latter may refer to science, math, engineering, and other hard sciences. The former is a set of fields which has been and continues to be dominated in large swaths by females. I thus do not see the facilitating need for additional assistance specific to sex, which does not engender merit-based performance. Likewise, the latter concentrations are fields which men have traditionally dominated, but to that I ask what the exact issue is. Is it that our issue is gender imbalance, or that we want to play guinea pig with our society and see, in a given scenario, which gender may come out on top? Should we manipulate a few variables? Or rather, would it be pervade that a few seek to bring about a constant shift of incentives and positive outcomes solely on the basis for sex for females, owing to a distorted perception of perpetual inequity? Between these three, the first tends to be voiced as the guiding necessity for these actions. However, it seems but a ruse given the two stronger explanations. There are numerous studies to show that a large amount of minority-based scholarships do not tend to, on the whole, and this is barring those stunning exceptions who would not apply as they would qualify for funding and prestige based upon their own merits, contribute to performance in or out of school. In other words, depriving others of a benefit on the basis of sex and creating and contributing to a culture of imbalance is fruitless. It is a seemingly positive endeavor if the logic tree from which it is plucked yields ripe fruit, but it is not. Scholarship aside as well, there are a large number of female entrants in the hard sciences who end up dropping out, while greater in-depth explanation as to why this occurs would be of interest. Incredible interest. It does not negate the primary point that simply entering a field with no basis of merit, especially when that is constituted upon an arbitrary trait for the individual, which is politically twisted as a means of operation, leads to bad outcomes for the individual, as well as ostensibly for those who would fund that individual. I would feel the need to press the interest of male candidates who are begrudged here, but that would not be necessary to get my point across. I would also ask you to consider the ramifications within the military, although that is an entirely different discussion, which I will not tend to here. Modern feminism runs counter to its own goals. By seeking so desperately to form an antagonist set of fractures within society while creating the image that institutional assistance should be conferred to certain segments of the population, it is plausible that the mentality espoused by this movement will sour an equally significant amount of the population, instead of enlisting a more positive, benign view of females. Should that indeed be a goal, it will likely lead to alternative scenarios in which newfound or stronger negativity is broached. On the more substantive end, see the above example of scholarships in collegiate education. Despite there being an endless amount of other tangents I may use, I would be remiss to not mention that amongst the chief paradoxes of modern feminism is that feminism seems innately opposed to feminist goals. That is, if we take feminism as a basic proposition, as a movement in pursuit of purview of equality and liberty, devoid of any valence or favor which may be garnered or manipulated by and all parties, bereft or for the benefit in any and all events where cause for such consideration may follow, it seems counterproductive that a movement would or should openly promote sex as a vehicle for benefit if feminism is supposed to be a proposition devoid of sexual valence for the explicit purpose of sex-neutral equity, using sex to validate oneself as well as an object of bargaining or political play, as it has come to pass and which has been, if one but peruses the social mediums mentioned at the beginning of this post, notwithstanding, mundane things like movies, TV, plays, books, everything, essentially. Highly visible and ostensibly common, it is a sign that feminism, if at least in the current form, has been a monumental failure. Actually, no, see. I beg your pardon. A failure would denote that a lack of what has been sought to have been pursued has been yielded. You have attempted to pluck from the tree to harvest, but you have not begotten any fruit. In this case, a philosophical failure seems to have reared itself as has substantive loss to society at large, in the form of bad policy and perverse incentives, begotten of exceptional and mundane dealings, which tilt in favor of a party on less than meritorious grounds. A substantive victory may be deemed to exist, though, as nowadays all we see is pandering to an illusory victim. If we take the purported goals of the movement upon face value, unfortunately, then any and all hitherto gains must be questioned. And guys, that is my first blog post. It was as much a mouthful to read as it is to, to just recite. And I hope that by reciting it, you might be able to maybe listen to it or be more engaged to it, have it on in the background or such. But also, I'm just hoping to engage the community this way. I think, writing a blog is, you got not as much engagement there. I personally would like to, I guess, kind of, give you a face, give a semblance of who I am, rather than just being a big block of text, essentially. So I guess here, you can see who I am, and you can hear my voice, and you can get a feel for who the guy typing this is. I would appreciate any and all comments. I'm not going to say anything like, hey, keep your comments nice, I know there's a lot of divergent opinions on this. This is why I wrote this in particular. So, if you got a bone to pick with me and what I say, well, I could tell you, to go say, well, I'm not going to say it because you know what I'm going to say. And I'm not going to be that not polite guy because I'm really polite. I'm so polite, I attracted my wife. She said, man, you're such a polite guy. You're a great guy. You're a gentleman. I said, oh, yeah, I know. I'm suave as, I'm suave. I'm nice. So I'll let you think and know if you're not being a nice guy. You don't have to be a nice guy. I don't mind, but I'll be a nice guy. So whether you want to be nice or don't want to be nice, that's all right with me. All right. So anything you have to say? Thank you so much for listening. Long video, 30 minutes. Cool. All right. See you later. See you in a few days. Bye bye.